All right, guys. I'm Lark Will, and this stream and video are going to be about going over my take on the character progression and tech issues in the game. Um, I kind of have it queued up a certain way, and I'll kind of walk through this for you guys. But I'm going to try to be quick. But I have quite a few topics to discuss. I'm not going to do a read through of the blog in this video. So just as an FYI, you guys are everyone has access to it, and I don't think it's providing much value to read line by line. And to be honest, there's not much here, so that's kind of one of the things I'll touch on. But I'm basically going to go through like a good, the bad, and the ugly kind of take, in my point of view, as to what they covered. And one thing I want to talk about up front is how they even titled it, which is basically character progression and tech issues. So I'm going to read the first two lines and then I'll just dive into it. So 3 weeks ago, we posted a response to some concerns raised by players regarding character progression and technical issues. In that post, we announced that we would address the feedback with specifics after a few weeks, and we're ready to share more with you today. Information with you today. All right. So, one thing of note that I think might be good to focus on is, and maybe even in my own write up of this, I didn't address so much, was that they're really addressing, in their view, character progression specifically and technical issues on their side as to their code or their bug fixes, those kind of things. So this, I think a lot of the player concerns were like more overarching, and they were focused more on character progression and tech issues, and then kind of putting a lot of our other concerns from the player base aside, and either not addressing it or addressing it in their last blog for their roadmap, things like that. So I'll try to be cognizant of that and touch on that as I go through this, because I try to be fair to them. If they weren't trying to address those concerns in this blog, it isn't necessarily fair for me to critique them on that. I'm going to anyways, but at least I'll try to acknowledge the fact that that wasn't their scope in this blog. So I just disclaimer. That's there for everybody. All right, guys. So again, this is gonna be a good, the bad, and ugly rendition of a review of this recent blog post, and I'm actually gonna start with let's do the good. So out of the good, I'm a good, bad, and the ugly fan, big Clint Eastwood homer. Um, and I'll kind of walk you guys through what my thoughts are on here and kind of give you a rundown. So the good aspects of their vlog, my dog wants to play frisbee. Uh, Having an Aussie, that's always fun, is the good. All right, so guys, the good training mods increase. So we got an increase of training mods, pretty significant. Looks like about, you guys can see it here, 800,000 XP or 1,000 L3 training mods. People will do kind of rundown of that. I've heard some people say that it's about enough to take a character from level 75 to 80 once a month. I haven't done the math myself, but that does seem significant. And again, I just to have a healthy kind of perspective towards this, I think we always want more roster and character progression, right? So as players, we always want to more. That's what these games are all about, is advancing your roster. But to be fair to Scopely, and I think to actually acknowledge the good, you want a balance. And I think that just because they're not giving us like infinite isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I think it's probably a positive actually. You want it to be have a good cadence and like difficulty level towards, people that are spending thousands upon thousands of the game probably want to get to max really quickly, and then players that are like me, maybe like more picky and choosy about, are spending much slower than that rate that the heavy spenders are going to do. Then free to play, much grindier, a lot of time investment, and that's pretty much it. And pretty much everyone except for the huge spenders should have a lot of time commitment in the game. What do you consider a lot? That's debatable, but the game wouldn't be fun. I've heard a lot of people talk about this, especially free to play players. They acknowledge that the game isn't fun if you just ramp up and get everyone to max right away. Um, you want choice. You want to actually pick and choose what teams, what characters you're going to build up, for what purposes in the game. Hey, I already have a strong raid team. I actually need a strong arena team. So you skip the next best raid team that comes out in favor of an arena team, or vice versa. And so I think that's also fun. And I think it's awesome in the game like these when our rosters are all shaped differently. So like one aspect of Red Stars I like is that it actually adds some chaos. Like all of our rosters, not just cookie cutter. Not everyone had a 7 Red Star Black Bolt. I still don't. Or Thanos, or whatever the next best character is. We have every roster is different, and I think that's also a benefit of somewhat capping and putting bottlenecks in the game, whether it's training materials or gold or whatever, what have you. I think it's a nice thing to actually have to pick and choose to a certain extent what teams and characters we build up. I find it a little bit laughable when I hear a lot of players, and I understand their reasoning for wanting it, but we all do. But when you can't max every character in every team up to like level 80, tier 15, right when they come out, I mean, come on, guys, it's okay. Like if you can get them up to a playable level, I think that's good. I think a lot of the end game players, like myself and other folks, have a little different perspective towards what's usable because the content is so difficult at the end game level that anything that isn't completely ramped and very near maxed out. I don't mean like every ability for T4s, but I mean it has to be tier 14. And for raids now, most of the raid content that we're doing as endgame players, if it's not a T14 character, they're almost unusable, regardless of red stars. There's very few exceptions. There are a few, but very few. And so that's, I think, the concern with the endgame players is that even if you buy characters or build them up to T13, have them at 5 red star, but T13, they're still not that usable in the game. And that's a different kind of challenge. And I don't think that's Scopely's fault necessarily, except for how they're raid designed. So I don't think it's a problem on the character build and roster progression side of things. I actually attribute that issue to the raid difficulty scaling. So how they scale the raids, Greek raids, and scale the Doom raid, things like that. They make it so much harder than the prior progression that it's difficult to use tunes that are not near maxed. So I think that's the problem. Really, isn't that we can't always progress every single character to max. It's that the modes in the game that are currently for in-game players require you to have them at max, and there's very little leeway to not. So that's one of the issues that I see. All right, guys. And again, the next line here is for the good is 2x intake of some orange gear. I think it's a positive for sure. There's no way other to really look at that. The only specific thing I would say is it's specific or gear. It was regarding some catalysts, some stat catalysts and origin pieces you can see here. And that was really the aspect that was a little bit of concern. I'll touch on that in a different spot, but more gear for what you're already doing in the game is a benefit, and they're putting more access to the orange mats in the future. They have plans to increase it in events, into the raid store and relic hunt events, and I think they're doubling the amount we get monthly from the relic hunt, so every little bit helps. And again, I don't have a major problem with orange gear where it's at right now, except for a few things. I think purple gear is still way too capped, especially for endgame players and anyone near that. You know, if you're 7 mil plus, purple gear is still a major issue from an acquisition standpoint, and it's a little strange that we're still having to have problems like it's difficult even for endgame players to build some of these mutant characters up to tier 12 just because we run out. And I think I opened near 1,000 purple orbs just to upgrade the new X-Men team to tier 12. Not even above tier 12, just T12. And I had to open about 1,000 purple orbs that I had hoarded. I just didn't have a use for them. And you could say, okay, well, you know, if you open them, you wouldn't have to do that. But opening 1,000 orbs just to rank up 5 new characters to tier 12 shows you how bottlenecked those materials are. 1,000 orbs is quite a lot. That was many months of raids to get to that amount, and I popped them all in one team to tier 12, 3 levels below max. So that shows you there is a bottleneck there, and purple gear was not addressed in this blog. So I think that's a little bit of a failing there, and something that's it's affecting me as an endgame player, and I imagine mid-game players are feeling that even worse than I am. So I think that's one of the other issues that. From a good standpoint, they're giving us more orange gear. From a bad standpoint, which is later. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead. That's a little missing there on the purple gear. All right, moving on. T15, 2x in War Store and currency. So I added this as good. I actually added it somewhere else in a different category. But from just the good side of things, a higher rate of accrual of these materials without any spin, it's a positive. So that's plus for the game. It'll help a lot of players advance into DD4 or even start DD4, start into DD3 if you're not there yet. So there's no other way to look at that. And like they mentioned in there, it's the natural time where you do a few months after a new gear level is introduced, and then they bring it to the game. I'll talk about the cons of that in a next section, but from just the vanilla straight reading of more gear equals good. Kudos to them, and I think that'll help players advance. All right, costumes, no stat bonuses. Personally, I was kind of up in the air as to like where to put this. I think some people would like to have stat bonuses, like feel empowered and like, oh, get that thrill. Like you buy a skin, you get this huge boost, and then Black Panther really excels in punching down on lower TCP characters, but he actually sucks versus like even or punching up, he's useless. So maybe he gets like this 50% stat jump with this rad skin that costs X amount of money or time to get unlock, and then you feel like your favorite character, if it happens to be Black Panther or whoever, is just stomping kids. That's empowering. That'd be fun in the game. So I can kind of see it both ways. Personally, I think adding stats to skins would be a major shakeup of balance in the game potentially, unless it was like really even. But it has a large potential to really throw off power scaling, and that could either be done really well and be fun, or else it could completely be chaotic and really just be head scratching. So I think a good starting place is just to release the skins, and then I'm fine with them at some point including stats, but I think they need to get a lot of player feedback as to what direction they go with that before they completely turn the table on all the stats, because especially if they start adding a bunch of bonus speed and those kind of things to skins, it could really become pay to win even more than the game is, and it'd be difficult to keep up depending on what kind of stats they included. They'd have to be careful. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but need to be careful. I think a nice introduction into skins is to not include stats and then take a different look at it. If they want to tie it to some events, unlocks, or different things that you need skins for. I've heard some people suggest. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but baby steps. So I'll put that in the good. All right, last one for the good category, guys, is arena cheating was acknowledged. In my arena shard, I'm not going to name the name here. I don't want to call people out in this forum on Twitch, but there are 1 to 2 known cheaters in my arena shard, and we talk about it in different groups, and we know who they are. We've reported, and I'm just in one shard, 500 or 5,000 players, whatever it is. And so all the different arena shards, there's odds are you have cheaters in your top 50, top 100. Sorry, I got to sneeze. Of your arena shard, and they're there, and they're causing problems. I don't like cheating in general. I'm kind of more on the ethical side of standpoint, just in IRL, and I'm just not a fan. So if you're cheating, you're really going out of your way to make somebody else's game experience poor. So good on Scopely for actually addressing it, but no timetable and no mention of bans. So that's I'm glad they finally came out and acknowledged it and said they're looking into making it go away and kind of plugging the gap there of the problem. But it's taken a long time, guys. But we got there. They've acknowledged it. I think that's a step. Hey, this is the problem. We're admitting it's a problem, and they're looking into a solution. And I think as an overall positive, even if they don't have timetables, guys, and are saying, hey, it's going to happen next week or 2 weeks or 2 months from now, just saying, hey, we know it's a problem and we're working on it. I think just as a step of like, here's an olive branch to the player base and community, is a really strong positive. I think a lot of the issues with the game, if they just did that olive branch, hey, we're aware this is an issue, we're going to look into how we can address things. I think that goes a long way with the community, at least for adults. I mean, I think most players in this game are adults, to be honest, especially for the paying community, for spenders. And not that's to knock the free to play at all, but I'm just saying a lot of people that are like voicing concern, those kind of things happen. I guarantee you they're working age adults. The vast majority of them are, because they care about the game, they're investing their time, they've been playing for years. Most of these people are adults, or they started as like 18 and now they're 21, so they're adults for the most part. So I think most of us have like a realistic approach to some of the failings in the game, and we're not asking for like hard timetables like it has to happen today. But I think as long as they acknowledge that there's are issues in the game and say, hey, we agree there are a problem and we're going to look into steps to fix it, we're good, man. Just keep on working on it. It's just when it goes neglected or ignored, and that's when there seems to be a buildup of community kind of frustration. All right, so that's it for the good guys. I'm sure there were some other things I didn't touch on in here. Again, I'm not going to read through this. You could say as a highlight, skilled military characters are getting a look at getting a buff. I didn't list this as good because, again, until they release the buffs to the team, if they make them super OP and Black Order strong, I'm going to think it's shit. If they release it as slight buffs that make them perform a certain function in war to counter one or two specific meta defenses, no problem. I think that's fair to the players that bought them. But to kind of like wonky release a team that looks like they don't have a purpose or their function, their kits are all over the place. They just cobbled together all these characters that didn't have a home with two new characters, threw them together. And then if they make them like super OP, I don't think that's fair to the players that kind of like read the release of the Toons kits as like and passed. But I think the the spending player base that actually went hard on them and paid them for those characters. I can see a balance there. We're trying to make it right for those guys to at least give them purpose. So they put them in a new event campaign, or not campaign, but a new event unlocked that's coming out monthly. I'll touch on that here in a few, but they're looking at a buff to those characters. All right, that's it for the good guys. I'm going to go on to the bad. So, boom. Wrong screen. There we go. Had to be on OBS. All right, so the bad. All right, so I'm just gonna run through this, guys, pretty quick. I know this is going along long. The first one I have for the bad. Again, if you're not a good, bad, and the ugly fan, I think these are like character archetypes. I just love them. And this character that's up on top left for the GIF is represents the bad in that movie. He's a great actor. Awesome, and he's played a good guy in some of the other spaghetti westerns, but in this one he happens to be the main kind of like bad guy. But he great character. All right, anyways. All right, the bad. The overall blog itself was very light on content and community response, or in response to the community like issues that were addressed. And if you're like following Reddit and following any kind of Discord channels, we're talking about the issues in the game. There are a large list of things that were not touched on. But again, I'm going to throw out the disclaimer to be fair to Scopely and FoxNext. They put their own parameters on this. So like to a certain extent, I'm like, that's kind of crap. There's a lot of issues in the game. You can't like narrow them all. Okay, I only want to tie my shoes. I don't want to eat breakfast or brush my teeth. The only chore I want to do in the morning is tie my shoes. Everything else, to the birds. So to a certain extent, I don't think that's right, or like what was the ask from the community side, player base wise. But to be fair to them, they did say this is a response for character progression and technical issues only. When they title like that, that's their thesis, that's their essay, that's what they're talking about. But I'm going to talk about it all. All right, guys. So there's overall is light on content and community response. So there's a lot of issues that were not addressed, and I'll kind of go through this, and then at the end, I think in the ugly side, I'll touch more on that. But it was very light overall. A lot of the issues in the game or things that players at all levels, beginner, free to play, mid game, whale, everyone has like a bone to pick with this. There were things that were missing out for every aspect of the player community, but there were some things that were included, but there was a lot that was omitted and not acknowledged. And I think one of the bad things with this overall is it didn't acknowledge many of the concerns that different segments of that were common for each segment, whether it's the free to play and new player experience, or the mid game kind of purple bottleneck in crunch for training mats, or the end game players lack of content. A lot of those things were not addressed here because they weren't in the scope of their thesis, so to speak. But they were valid concerns that were brought up. But it feels like, at least in my opinion, that they were only listening to very end game alliances. And I'm in a top 50 alliance, and I still don't feel like I'm even end game enough to get feedback heard by the devs. And I don't mean that for me as a player, but I mean my alliance. And it seems like they were only listening to a very, very small select few, whether it's content creators or like, I don't know, a lot of even content creators, I listen to them and they were saying, hey, our feedback hasn't been taken. So to be fair to them, it seems like they're just kind of playing by their own kind of beat of the drum, kind of so to speak. But there might be a very cracking select few that have direct access to the devs, maybe the top 100 list of spenders and TCP players in the game, and they probably have some special access and more attention of the devs' ear. But there's a lot of aspects of the game that were not addressed here, and I see that as a bad. That's a problem that so many of the major current issues in the game weren't at least discussed or acknowledged. Not even with a roadmap or saying, hey, we have a fix for it, but just saying, hey, we're aware, we agree, and we're looking into it. Done. I'm good. But just to omit them and not address them at all, it means that they're gonna go on for a very long time until there's another player community upheaval, and then finally get that on the board of things to touch on. And whether that's 6 months from now, a year, 2 years from now, I and that's another issue I'm going to get into is the cycle of this kind of how relationship between Scopely, the dev, and the player community. But let me move on. Overall, very light. All right, hoarding rewarded again in the War Store. So in the War Store, guys, I'm not a fan of how they rework orbs personally. I think it's a bad way to design a game. I think it's a lazy way, and I think they do it because it's the easiest way for them. But I think it promotes like bad behaviors in the game. And I don't mean that hoarding is bad, but I mean like some players benefiting from their currency at 2x or 4x the rate of other players who spend it. It's a weird, and like in general in life, I'm for like investing in delayed gratification, but in a game where you perform certain functions to get extra rewards, it seems strange to me that if you bank the initial currency, whether it's gold or whether it's war store currency, that you're able to leverage that more by holding on to it, not spending it, and waiting 6 months until these initial drop rates or reward rates. Like, so, hey, I spent 1,400 or 1,200 for the highest grade current war orb for T15 gear. If I just wait 6 months or 4 months, they're going to change that because they know, we know, everyone knows the ratio and ROI of currency to whatever you get is bunk. So they're going to fix it in 4 to 6 months. So let's just hold on to it and then wait until they do that fix. And then I'll get 2x to 4x what everyone else spent immediately when they were acquiring the currency and buying one. Acquire currency, buy, acquire currency, buy. But if I just hold and then wait 3 to 6 months, then I can buy a lot more with that currency and get ahead of those players who spent it in the past. I think that's a funky rotation. They keep doing this, specifically with the War Store. They keep upgrading these new war orbs because they have the new gear tier locked behind the War Store, and that looks like their thing. So FYI, if be very careful as a player in the mid game or an end game with how you spend your war currency, and they've shown this continually now with both the T14 mats and the T15 mats, whether it's the orbs or now changing the how many you get for your war currency on an individual buy from the daily 3x refreshes that they do, every 7 or 8 hours, whatever it is. That now you're gonna get 2x what you would have got for the same currency amount. So what I'm saying is, it looks like this is their MO. They're announcing that they're going to continue to do this through this blog, and be aware of that and just plan ahead. I'm not trying to bitch and moan about what's done in the past. I personally would prefer them to release the gear stuff in the end game raids. So me personally, I think the gear should be released through the Doom raids. For the highest gear content, if they make it super hard, release the gear through that mechanism. Make it limited. They can bottleneck it however they want, but release it through there. But they've pulled that out because we're not spending on raids, so they want to paywall it, which is fine. I think that's fine. But it's strange that they don't create new orbs for the increased bottleneck. They just redo the old ones, and then that means you're benefiting hoarders. So I think everyone should hoard to a certain extent, specifically in the War Store. You should hoard your War Store when you don't need it. You should not spend it, in my opinion, unless you're ramping towards the next level of Dark Dimension. Otherwise, if you've completed the last existing one, so currently Dark Dimension 4, it's a strange thing, but you might want to hold on to your currency until they create the next tier 16 orb, and then just buy all those when it comes out, because or else hold on to until they revamp that one, because the first one's going to be shit for the drop rate or the reward rate that you get for an ROI. You could hold on even 6 months after that and get 2x of those. So it's just depending on how long you're willing to hold. But the longer you hold, the more value you're getting in return for your currency. And I think that's a strange mechanic. And maybe that's maybe that's fair. Maybe it's a trade-off between immediate gratification and delayed gratification. And the delayed one has a better ROI. But I do think, just in general terms, it promotes hoarding. I have hoarded some in the past, not necessarily war currency, but I've hoarded gold or some different other orbs and stuff like that. But it's very obvious that the war store is a major bottleneck. And then just manage your resources of the currency you have there with that in mind. Just be mindful. All right, moving on. No RTA updates. I thought this was a bad. They clearly lacked direction with RTA. There was no improvements other than the last blog that they announced regarding a roadmap, regarding like timeouts and stuff like that. So like small fix like that. But I was bummed. Again, this was one of the major failings I think there is with the game right now is they need to address that it's unfun, and you got to put some effort into making the game modes fun. You can't just keep reskinning Blitz and doing that in every mode. It's okay. So Blitz is obviously just fast 5v5 fights. Okay, now let's do tie this new Blitz 2.0 to a battle pass to do a monthly content, make him grind it forever, and then to replicate Blitz time investment in the game. It's just a bad experience. So you got to do something, whether it's leagues or whatever it is, to make it enjoyable. And there's a lot of options and different things out there. They don't take a lot of creativity, but it has to be a little effort. And I think right now, without actually acknowledging in here, and again, they're titling this character progression and tech issues, not game modes. But the Scopely and Foxnex and their dev team are not showing much progress, and it's very, very slow. The last major change from a game mode standpoint came in War, and that was going on 2.5 years ago. So we're a very, very long ways away from War being introduced to the game. For no significant new game modes to come to the game that are a different dynamic from just a static 5v5 load-in fight is silly to me, and it's inexcusable. So they need to put more effort into it and care about the product, in my opinion. Because again, it has a lot of potential, and people are willing to spend these characters, but we do want new game modes to actually play them. I'm not going to beat that drum. Everyone knows it. But it's not just an RTA problem, guys. It's a game problem, and RTA just happens to be the last one because it's the most recent mode introduced to the game. But Arena PvP came out before that. Personally, I loved it. A lot of people didn't. So, to be fair to Scopely, I didn't. I thought it was a hit. Other people, but obviously from their metrics, it didn't prove to be so. I think it was significantly better than RTA, but they're choosing to tie the battle pass and the grind of their place blitz time into RTA. So I won't spend too much more time on that because I think we all know the issues, but they got to spend some effort into making these game modes enjoyable, and it can't just be lazy. They can't just say, hey, what do we want without anything what the players want. We don't care what the players want. We just want their time in the game, and we want their money. So tie it to this long, grindy, unfun mode. And that way we can have them spend on this, and we can get all of our all the revenue stream out of that. That's perfectly fine. No one has an issue with it, but you got to make it somewhat enjoyable. And it can't just be, hey, we're gonna do away with Blitz, introduce Blitz Sim, and then make you Blitz, and then pay us $20 to $50 a month for this new thing, and some rewards on the side. That's really lazy. It's not good game design. It's pretty poor, guys. So just from a standpoint of like caring about the product and what they're rolling out, I don't think that shows much promise, unfortunately. And for them to be is released back in December with leagues coming soon. I kind of talked about that in another section, but moving on. RTA, no updates to what makes it enjoyable. And that's a shame. All right, 61s, the unit crunch for T13 through tier 15 bottleneck. So I mean adamantium, lumininium, whatever else there is. There's like a ton of those things, right? The earpieces, I don't have a problem with it being capped for tier 15 or even tier 14 at this point. I'm still okay with tier 14 being somewhat bottlenecked. But it's ridiculous that they tie this to tier 13. I think it was just bad game design. They should have created different materials, and obviously they want us to keep buying these. I've heard other people say it's an impulse buy, so that's why they're not making it more accessible. But that was not included in this blog as a material that was going to be becoming more accessible. So those things, A, are effing expensive in the store. The very minimum, even if they're not going to give us more access to those 61s, because you need 61. I'm sorry, why there's 61s, guys? Just the title. It's because you need 61 of those to take one tier 12 character all the way up to tier 15. So that's why I call them 61s. I know they have the different other names. People call them all sorts of different things. But if you want to take X23 from tier 12 to tier 15, you require 61 adamantium, for example, and so on for different characters. Gravitonium, etc. So I have no problem with it being capped for tier 14 to a certain extent, tier 15 for sure, no problem. But they should have actually created a different material or a higher grade of the same type. So instead of orange, it's something else or more specific, anything you want to do. But they use the same one for 13, 14, and 15. And now we can't take any of our roster to tier 13 because of those. And the SBCs are the main thing, catalysts. So we're getting some catalyst relief, but we're not getting relief on those. And I think the minimum that we should have asked for, guys, or not asked for, but they should be doing, is they should have adjusted the price on those in the store. Because you still have the core to get them. So reducing the gold price is the minimum they should have done. I think they should cost like half as much as they do. So instead of 72K, 72,000 per in the store, they should cost roughly 30 to 36,000. So just cut in half. It's called 36K per. And I think that's a good price point. Why they cost more than a tier 15 piece? It's bizarre. And they are very rare still, for being such an old piece. But they have those $20 or $25 packs that they're selling everybody. But for me, they should be widely more available. And the very minimum, they should be costing 36 in this store. That way they would actually get a little gold relief. You're still not accruing them faster because you're not going to core any more than you're already doing, probably, or at least the vast majority of most players wouldn't, just because the price is reduced. But at least you're getting a little gold relief. So even if they're not going to make gold more accessible in the game, just by reducing the price of that one item type, we on a weekly basis, that would net us probably I probably buy 10 of those a week. So that's probably another 10 to 15. That's probably another 300,000 to 500,000 extra gold you have per week just by not having those cost from 72K to 36K. That's the extra saves I have, and that would add up. That's extra stuff you can do with characters. Another level you put on somebody, etc. And that would be a little bit of relief. So hopefully they go back in and touch that up. That's what I'd like to see. All right, guys, the next thing is the perpetual frustration mechanics in Ouroboros. I don't know if I spelled that right. I have a book somewhere back there I've read a few pages of, and I didn't look it up. I should have. I meant to. I apologize if I'm insulting anybody with my bad spelling of Ouroboros. But that's what it reminds me of, guys. And I think that's one of the bad things with this blog in general. And currently, where I see the game at is that I don't think it's a positive. I see other people in my alliance, and they try to remain positive all times, and I think that's a really admirable quality, and I want to commend them for that, because I think it's a nice characteristic to have in real life, is to have a positive outlook. No matter how much crap is going on around you, just ignore it and stay positive, and worry about you, worry about your life, where you're going. Don't worry about the crap. So I actually agree with the philosophy, even though I'm not always like that. It's something I aspire to, and I think that's a positive. But this game, I think they've promoted an unhealthy dynamic and Ouroboros type evolution here. So the game in general, guys, I think we all know it. It's for frustration mechanics. So the more they inject and set up like a framework of gear limitations and restrictions and vast difficulty levels. That way you have to ramp your characters even higher to build up to it, which means money if you want to do it anytime between now and you die. And I think that's fine to a certain extent. So okay, it's a very expensive game, has frustration mechanics, we all know that, and need to build up. The problem is when they don't have a dev team that does quality control and quality assurance, bug fixes, quality of life fixes on a kind of consistent basis, even like once a year, rolling out some major ones that we're not asking for, that they do on their own. I think a really good one for them to do would be achievements. Overhaul all of the achievements and make that better for the new player experience, because the rewards in there are god awful. I mean, just pathetic. And always have been. It's just terrible, terrible, terrible. It's not encouraging if you're starting the game. They should ramp that up. I don't even care if I get anything out of it as an endgame player. I'm, going on 11 million roster power here, in the next week. I don't care. You don't have to give anything to me. I don't care. I think if they overdo achievements or overhaul achievements, they would have to give stuff to everyone, because there's so many players that you'd have to draw a line somewhere. What do you consider a new player? Somebody's probably gonna be a week past that line and be frustrated. So you'd probably have to give all of the the difference of the achievement overhaul to everybody. But personally, as an in-game player, I don't care. I'm just saying make it right for the new player experience and the mid-game guys that are closer to that. If you're over, I don't know, 10 million, again, someone's a 10 plus million players probably going to complain. But personally, in my opinion, I don't care. I would just say try to do some new player stuff for them to help them move along and make them feel excited about the game. I'm already well past that level. I don't mean excitement, but well past the achievement kind of like bonuses to where it actually affect my count. But I think for new players, that'd be a nice thing to do. But do things that don't require the player base to communally. Okay, so let me rewind. So they inject frustration mechanics in the game, and they know that the result of that is the player base is going to be frustrated. And then a certain percentage of that frustrated community of the player base, their customer base, is going to spend to overcome that frustration. Okay, I'm frustrated. What can I do about it? I can throw my wallet at the game. Cool. And that's the whole purpose of the frustration mechanics. Frustrate them so that they spend to alleviate the frustration. Okay, that's the whole game and the profit model and all that stuff. Perfectly fine, nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I think their price points, to be honest, are horseshit. But that's a different kind of thing. I just choose not to spend, and that's how I manage that. Or I choose to spend when I want to. Voila. Personally, I think they're absolutely ludicrous. But besides that, I don't even want to necessarily touch on the price points so much. But when you have a model that injects frustration into your customer base, you constantly have a perpetually agitated player base. And I think that's like a what's the right word? Not a quandary, but like a what's the word? Precarious position to be in. It's a very like unsteadying position. Like the player base is always like frustrated. They want them to be frustrated. They acknowledge that they're going to be frustrated, and that's built in. So what I'm getting at is like the devs acknowledge that we're going to be frustrated, and they're only going to do steps to alleviate our frustration once it gets to a boiling point to where we're so loud and ticked off that we're voicing it in a very large like megaphone, and it's saying this is effed up, fix it. And it has to get to a loud spot, and I don't think that's healthy. And getting back to like Philosopher and other folks that really try to have a positive outlook on the game, I don't say that their philosophy is wrong, but the game is injecting so much frustration onto the player base that it's kind of, I don't want to say they're ignorant or that stance is ignorant, but I'm saying it's not fair to not acknowledge that a lot of the player base that is not spending tens of thousands of dollars on this game is going to feel frustrated because the game is purposely making them feel frustrated. It is by their design. It's like you're in a relationship with somebody that is just pecking at you the constantly, and of course they know they're frustrating you. They're trolling you, and they're doing it on purpose. And to a certain extent, or in large, be the mechanics and the material restrictions, they're doing that on purpose. And I don't mean that they want you to stop, but I mean it's intentional. So we're kind of stuck in this Ouroboros where they're generating frustration in the game. The player base is ramping up and has a steadily growing boiling point to where they're frustrated, and then it tips over, and then they start shouting out on Reddit saying, hey, we need fixes, and we're going on strike, or whatever that thing was a year ago, where the endgame players banded together for a day strike on Cyclops and whatever that was. And that's unhealthy. That's like an unhealthy player-based environment, but it's created by the developer guys, and it'd be nice to get away from that. And so besides complaining about that, I think that's baked in. I don't think it's going to change, and I think it's perfectly fine not for it to change. So to talk productively, what I would like to see them do is to be working on continuous things in the game in the background without us having to boil over before we ask about it, guys. Like I don't understand, and I can't see for the life of me, besides them just not wanting to spend manpower. Again, that's tied to their profit model, but on giving us things like save squads before we have to say, dude, we are tired of asking for save squads. Can you just drop like 100 in here and give us tabs? 2 years ago, like, why are we asking, complaining? Just put it in the game, guys. And then I think things like that. So like we can be, I personally am fine with like not having all my characters at tier 15. I'm perfectly fine with that. Just very slowly, the state of my roster progression at tier 14, tier 15, I'm fine with it. I think it's bad that we can't progress past tier 12 to tier 13. And I think they're the last and the next to last gear tiers should be ramped up to be difficult in all games. But tier 13, I think that's time, especially because such a small. It's like 2.7 or 2.4% increase over tier 12. Tier 14 is the big stat jump, so I think tier 13 should be we should be up there by now with most of our roster as endgame players. But overall, what I would like to see is just the devs do things more steadily before it gets to like a fever pitch in the community from a quality of life standpoint. We shouldn't have to ask for new game modes for 2.5, 3 years. They should be working on them at all times. Quality of life and bug fixes, they should be working on those at all times. We shouldn't have to ask for them. But one of the problems with this kind of Ouroboros they have is they don't have a QC team, guys. They're relying on us as endgame users to do the endgame testing and then report the problems. Hey, there's cheaters in the arena. Hey, RTA sucks. Hey, there's bugs in all the characters you release. Hey, all your store stuff, not all of it, but some of the store stuff has the wrong logos or price points or etc. They're not doing their quality control checks. So they're relying on us. And then again, that's frustration on the player base. And then we're voicing that frustration and then they're reacting to it. And that's the same thing with the price points. And hey, we don't need to fix the achievements because people aren't banding together to complain about it loud enough. And so they're kind of taking like a politics approach to things where like, unless the things that get moved on in politics are the things that crazy people band together to scream loud enough to change. And that's unhealthy because that means the only people that get heard and the only things that change are when a group of very loud, obnoxious people band together to complain about it. And I don't think anyone wants to be in that mode. I don't want to be part of that. I don't think it's healthy for the people that are receiving it, the politicians. And there's a lot of other valid things, in life and in society that need to be fixed in IRL. But the things that get addressed are the noisy wheel. The noisy wheel gets the grease, so to speak. And that seems to be the culture that Scopely and the development team has created, and they've created this for themselves. And in my opinion, what they need to do to get away from that kind of negative, it's cancerous, man. It's bad. It's all bad. What they should do to get away from that is get a QC team, start doing quality of life fixes to the game, like save squads and arena fixes and all these things continuously in the background. Even if you're not going to do like new game modes, like which is what I really want, on an annual basis, you got that are fun. Clarify that. You got to start doing more continuous quality of life fixes to improve things and look at the bottlenecks in the game that don't necessarily need to be bottlenecks. And there's always going to be disagreement on that, but ease up some of the older ones is what I'm saying. So some of the older ones should constantly be falling off and introducing new ones. But if the older ones are never being falled off until we're screaming, hey, this 2 or 3 year old bottleneck is still an issue, what gives? That's a problem. So every time they introduce a new one, that's what I think. So a perfect way for me to address this is you introduce a new gear tier that's a new major bottleneck, ease up on an old one that's from 3 years ago. That's the way you can have a balance. Okay, new bottleneck, an old one goes away. New bottleneck, old one goes away. Wax on, wax off. I like looking at myself when I'm talking about this. But that's how you have balance, and then that's how you really keep things fluid. So okay, we know the new thing's gonna be a bottleneck, but ease up on something else. If you want to pick, like you're in a relationship and you have someone that's picking on you all the time, okay, if you want to pick on me about a new issue on, hey, take out the trash, cool, but at least acknowledge that, I took the kids to school, I bought them lunch, I took them to their sports and all activities. So you just can't be negative frustration all the time. You got to ease up on something. It's got to be balanced. Okay, here's frustration and here's an easement. Frustration, easement. And if they get into that flow, it'll be a much better state of the game, and the player base won't be at this fever pitch. And we shouldn't have to get to that point as a player base. But in my viewpoint, they're very lazy, and they're relying on us to complain before they fix any thing in the game. And I think that's a problem on them, not on us. But it's of their choosing, and they need to do something about that. If they don't want the community to be so negative all the time, you got to start doing more quality of life and QC quality control things in the background consistently, and then that should ease dramatically. Most level-headed people like myself that have frustrations in the game will chill. Because we're not like this normally. This isn't our preference to be, but the game's seeing neglect, and the neglect needs to be proactively fixed, not reactionary. But they have this very reactionary model, and they need to be proactive. All right, moving on. Sorry. That was a long one, guys. I'll try to speed up. Foxnex and Scopely whack-a-mole philosophy. So same shit. I just explained it. That's what they do, guys. They have a whack-a-mole philosophy of the game. They don't proactively address things until the community brings it up as a concern, and then they'll do something about it at some point. So sometimes 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road. But it's a whack-a-mole philosophy. I think it's bunk, especially at their price points. They need to be more proactive. And I think we're just going to consistently, well, kind of getting about this, guys, is that this blog and feedback is what we've done 6 months ago, what we did a year ago, 2 years ago. So I would like to see the community evolve past this revolving, constant cycle of frustration, bitch and moaning, band-aid fixes, and just going round and around with that. They need to get to a spot. I would like to see the game get to a spot where they're doing more consistent quality of life and QC stuff in the background, so where we're not in this cycle of negativity. So let's get to a positive state where the game's actually fun. It's seeing improvement in the background, and we don't have to complain with a megaphone to get it. And it's the major issues that are causing the game to be problematic are being improved. But it's difficult, guys. There's the same problems that have been in this game for 3 years. The constant bugs that are being released in the game have not seen improvement at all. So it seems like they're not willing to increase the labor or staffing to address these. So we're stuck in this cycle, and it's of their own concern. But I would love personally for this never to happen again. Never to have the game get to a certain spot to where like there's a large percentage of the end game populace and mid game players are getting their megaphones out and saying, "Hey, we need to see improvement." They need to be proactive, not reactive, and that's where the game needs to go. All right, non-endgame player issues ignored. So I'm an endgame player. There were some things for me acknowledging here, but mostly for free-to-play players, guys. I don't know if there was a lot of new player and mid-game player aspects of the game. Purple gear, blitz issues with challenges for early accounts and mid-game accounts to succeed in blitz. To feel like engaged in the player base. They're kind of like, redheaded stepchild in Blitz and different modes like that. So some of their concerns from their accounts are being ignored. And I think that's a problem with only listening to the top 100 players, is that you're getting a very narrow perspective as to the issues of the game. And they should get like a board of trustees from a player-based standpoint to provide feedback. I think somebody that has a really good level-headed perspective on this, Mr. Freedplay and Goofy Rexy would be great community ambassadors for different segments of the game and play styles. Goofy spends a little bit cheap to play. Mr. Freedplay, I think, was free to play. He might be spending now. I don't follow him extremely well, but and there's many others. But there's other people that do content. Mole, I think, might be an ambassador. I'm not sure what he does, or envoy, whatever you want to call him. But there's different players at different segments of the populace that can provide good constructive feedback, and not just whine, but constructive. Here's some reasonable things that you can do without investing 1,000 man hours to improve the game experience for players and help them get into the game, stick with the game. Eventually they might spend on the game, but help them feel excited about the game when they come on board. And I don't think the new player experience is actually terrible. I started a new player account. I actually think it was a lot more fun than my existing account personally, but I do think there's certain things that are like a little weak. The achievements are just still, even as a new player, like, oh my gosh, what are these for? Like, just get rid of these things. They're terrible. But they're like, opening up ores actually feels good. So there's a lot of positive stuff for a new player account, guys. But like I got to blitzing. I can't even do anything in blitz. I got like 5 teams, which is fine. But like the mid game player experience, I think for blitzing, could you see a change? Purple gear material, could see a change for them. Training mats, I think they acknowledge. All right, moving on. Were matchmaking issues. I was really bummed, guys, and I know it wasn't a large player concern. It might be a small segment of the player base that's impacted by this in a major way consistently. Sometimes players might feel it every now and again. I sent a screenshot. I don't have the game open right now. Oh, I do. Let me see if I can show you guys this. One second. So I'm currently in a war, guys, and my alliance, let me see if I can get this set up. My alliance is facing a shell. And so the shell that I'm facing is alliance that gave up. And they basically, I'll show you their title here, guys, and it'll make sense when you see it. So, boom. And over here, you can see it's 595 to 0. Again, a top 50 TCP alliance, and we're very, very competitive in war. We're one of the most competitive alliances for war you will see, especially for endgame players. We had to switch from time zone 1 to time zone 3, though, because we kept facing all of the top 10 TCP alliances, and it was brutal. So we were facing 30 to 150 million punch-ups every war, and it was absolutely brutal. We kicked the crap out of anyone that we fought, for the most part, around our TCP, but we were just getting sumo wrestled as a featherweight versus the top TCP alliance in the game. So we're facing this alliance, guys, called Fix the War. And so I'll go to the opponents, and there's one player in this alliance left as a shell. That's probably an alternate account. And apparently they decided, you know what, our matchmaking is so bad, we're having to get a different alliance put together to transfer all of our players to, or else they disbanded. So it's one or the other. I don't know which one this was. I'm in time zone 3, so you guys might know who this is. I don't. And it looks like this is an old shell because it's probably was plat 1 before, and they dropped because now they're gold 4. So this was probably a top 8 elo alliance in zone 3, because my group is top 8, top 9. So we're facing the top alliances of time zone 3. And this one used to be it. So they disbanded because the matchmaking was so unfavorable. And maybe they transferred from a different time zone. I don't know. With the font, there's probably not too many 01s in there, or blue. But FY, that's what a lot of folks are facing, guys. So let me get rid of that for a second. And so yeah, that's what I'd like to see addressed, guys, is the war matchmaking. So the war matchmaking, guys, is problematic. You shouldn't. I would. They personally, what I think could be good in the game is alliances that are out around a certain band of TCP should face other alliances within a very small range, say 10 million up or down, maybe 20 max, 20 million up or down, whatever you want to call it, but it has to have reasonable maxes going down or up, punch down, punch up. And then that's who they're fighting against. And then the top alliances, maybe the top 10, top 20 alliances, maybe they don't have any time zones. And maybe all of them just face each other constantly. I don't know. But you got to do something to where, or even for the top 10 guys, maybe they don't even face other alliances. Maybe they just face, like if there's no other alliances within their range, maybe they face like an AI created alliance at their same band. And then it's just an AI that's fighting them. And they have to beat the AI. And there's some kind of like something goes on for them to give them like a balance or a fun war where they can compete with, because for the most part they're punching down massively, but it's not fun. Or the other option, I guess, would be if you want to keep the time zones and not do like an AI fight, would be not have it locked between the top 8 or top 9. That way you're spreading who they're beating up, because whether they're punching down 50 million or 200 million, there's no difference. But when you get to the top 8 or top 9 elo bracket, guys, there's this problem where you get stuck facing these massive, massive alliances, and you have no chance, and you're getting decimated, and it's a very unfair fight, and your rewards are terrible. So my alliance has always been plat 1 for war, but we're constantly fighting, at least in time zone 1, these alliances that were 100 plus million stronger than we were. And how is that fair when we're not getting better rewards for being that good? So there's alliances that are purely casual and face other casual war alliances, and they're all plat 1, and they don't try, they don't buy the war store currency, they don't refresh the store constantly every day for the war currency out of the Blitz store. So they're not coring, and they're not spending real world money for the war currency, and they're still the same rating, getting the same war rewards as other alliances that are in the top 10 of their time zone, and are getting a ton of unwinnable wars that are just awful experience. And they're just doing it completely free to play and casual with no effort. or very little effort. So I don't know. That, in my opinion, needs to be fixed. I think the fix to that would be make everyone fight across. So if very competitive ones shouldn't be only fighting other very competitive alliances, and currently they have an ELO MMR system. But in my opinion, unless the ELO MMR top alliances get drastically better rewards for their effort, other than just being a competitive person, right now, what's the point? You don't get anything better. It's very difficult to position yourself where your alliance isn't getting squashed on by these top 10 alliances if you're not in that band. So most alliances are saying, okay, it doesn't pay to be competitive in war, so just play casual versus other casuals, and then you still have the similar war rating as you would if you're going hyper competitive, but with much less effort. So it's just a bad system. It's not designed well. If the rewards were structured towards the higher you got up from an ELO MMR standpoint, you got a much higher payout based upon your tier and your hidden MMR, I think it would be fine. But they don't do that. You have these war season rewards that pay out based upon your war trophies, which isn't tied to your hidden MMR or ELO. So it makes no sense. The ELO punishes you, and then you don't get the reward of the trophy payout. You're getting a much lower payout. So your ELO's way high, your war trophies are way low because you're getting hit against these top 10 alliances constantly. And then you get this low payout that other casual alliances that you just murder. We would just murder these guys. And we never face them because they're not anywhere near our ELO or MMR. So it's just a stupid system, guys. It's not designed well. They either need to scale the rewards for the hidden ELO MMR, or else make it weight class oriented toward players that are alliances that are of a certain band face other alliances that are in the same time zone in their same kind of band, upper 10 or 20 million. That's who you face, and you always face those, nobody else. And then if they're casual in war, doesn't matter. They have a casual, say 200 million TCP alliance should face all alliances around their TCP range, regardless of what ELO they are. If the war season rewards aren't going to differ based upon ELO. So as long as those war season trophy or war season rewards are not going to vary based upon ELO, then you should face everybody. The the filthy casuals, the filthy hardcore, everybody you should face them. But currently they have it separated by ELO or MMR. So the hardcore groups are facing other hardcore groups, and we never face the casuals. And it's not that I want to go beat up on the casuals, but it's very strange that we get put up against the very, Legion and Cabal get murdered by 150 million punch down, and we never get to face, besides the Shell Alliance who quit, a punch down ourselves that's significant. And not that I want to punch down, I actually want really fair wars all the time, but that's what we actually want. But it's weird to always only get the top ones. So I would get rid of this top 8 bracket in each time zone, trash that, it's garbage, and then just make it everyone, then randomly rotate different teams in to face the Legion of Cabals, and the Pants of Hulks. They're up there at the very top, POH Smash, and that way it's not the same group that are getting just massacred by these alliances. You're dispersing the punishment or the negative kind of experience, and that way it's more dispersed and it's not felt as strongly by a few. And that way, what I'm getting at, guys, is that alliance quit the game, or else they disbanded, took over a new alliance just to get away from the terrible experience because it was causing so much frustration in their alliance, or else they disbanded their group and they joined other alliances at lower ratings to get away from it. So whatever it is, it's a very weird thing. I've never been in a game where the game generates a problem and the answer to the problem was either quit the game, disband your alliance, and join other ones, or join a shell and then move your whole alliance over to it. That is the kind of thing I'm thinking that the game should try to introduce to that way, do fixes on this so we don't have to have this problem. It's strange that they're not acknowledging that that's an issue, and this has been going on for over a year since war's been out and this trophy system's been out now. Alliances have been disbanding to get away from this problem of you're getting just murdered by these top 5 TCP alliances in the game. You have no recourse, you're stuck. So either disband, join different alliances that are not in that same window, ELO, or go casual, or quit the game, or join a shell. These are not good options. Why are we in this position? Fix it, please. It'd be nice if that was acknowledged. And again, if it, even if it wasn't, again, not a timetable, not saying, hey, we'll fix it tomorrow or next week, just saying we're aware this is an issue in the game. We're looking at, we're taking in player feedback. We're thinking about ways internally that we can address it and make it so, alliances aren't having to disband or quit our game because of the matchmaking is so poor. We want to find healthy options to address this, but also give the top, 10 to 20 alliances also some kind of, game experience as well. And we're going to try to find a solution here in the next 3 to 6 months. Perfect. That's all you have to do. But just continually ignore it, not acknowledge it, and let all these players and alliances disband or leave the game is not healthy. And that's part of the problem. All right, moving on. Next, guys, that was the bad. And the next one is going to be, not the good. Gonna be the ugly. So this is my favorite character. I love Clint, but this guy is amazing. If you ever watched Good Bad Ugly, I just found this gift freaking fantastic. I thought it was just absolutely amazing. If you don't like this character, I don't tell you, you don't like bad guys in movies. They don't make bad guys like this dude in movies anymore. He's my favorite bad guy of all time. You can. Darth Vader has nothing on this dude. This guy, I forgot his name. I should actually look up this actor's name. He's freaking amazing. This character actor is just, oh my gosh, he is hilarious. Especially for back then when it's so understated what you're doing, him and Clint and all that stuff. But just comedic bad guy. Personally, one of my favorites of all time. All right, so the ugly on the post, guys. Belly flop team assigned to event requirements. So the skill military. It's cool that they give them a purpose now, but it seems like all the teams that have no purpose and no function, they assign them either Kree to the old school Shield legendary event for Nick Fury, Wakanda to Chaos Theory, Hand to, I'm getting the events mixed up, but Wakanda to an event, monthly event, a Hand to a monthly event, now Skill Military to a monthly event. So it's like all the old toys that no one wants to play with, make them a monthly event requirement. I think that's ugly. That's not good for the game. It's like, hey, you spent all this money for these characters, or else, hey, all this player base didn't build them up because no one cared about them, didn't like them. Now we're going to make you build them up. So to a certain extent, giving teams a purpose, I think, is good, but it's very much the ugly duckling pro of like teams no one wants. Make them a requirement for these monthly events. That's where those go. So a team's a belly flop when they go to a monthly event. If Silver Surfer goes to a monthly event, I will know that he was a bad release character when he comes out, and I'll be bummed because he's my favorite character. But yeah, if any of your favorite characters are on any of those teams that are required for monthly events, more likely than not, they're not functional in the meta, and you should be bummed. But that's looks like where Skilled Military is going. They did talk about potentially giving them some increases again, buffs, at some point. But currently, belly flop. There you go. You're shelved. Here's your event. Bug fixes take forever, but thank you, I guess. So we got some bug fixes down here, guys, and they were talked about technical issues. So Thor's hammer got fixed or is getting fixed. Buffs not expiring when intended. This has been out for like 6 months in war. You see in a lot of your shield fights, in Black Order arena fights. You have to watch the indicators. You can't tell when a taunt's up, bleeds down. It's a mess. Been a mess for a long time. We've reported it for a long time, and they're finally, I guess, fixing it in 5.2. Thank you, I guess. Why does it take so long, guys, for these issues to be addressed? These are the quality of life things that you should be doing in the background. It'd be nice. And that way, again, it just adds to the overall kind of frustrations in the game. Is it the major one thing? Is it the biggest thing? Currently in war, like some of your war teams are being scrambled when you load into a fight. I've experienced it many times where my Black Order will be all out of whack. I've still won the fights, but I'm sure people out there have lost fights just due to the positioning of their tanks bad, or else an adjacent character gets nuked because it scrambles that you don't you want to protect. And so things like that, hopefully they'll go in and fix these things without us having to chirp so loudly for. We need to get out of that. It's we don't want to be on I don't know how to do a megaphone hand signal like but anyways, but yeah, I think it'd be nice for OMG and Remenex and all the different content creators not to have to report. They shouldn't have to be reporting on constant bugs. I mean, it's like a full-time job for them just doing bug reporting. And those guys, I do, I'm a part-time kind of just talk guy, but those guys are full-timers, dude. And I feel bad for them having to spend their time talking about negative. They should be pumping up the positive of the game, not having to report all these negatives. Once in a while, sure, but like every day making them say, where are the fixes for these things? And not just for them, but just for the player-facing community. Like, again, the game should have their own QC department and not relying on the players to um, cry and moan for fixes. These things should be addressed, acknowledged, discovered on the developer side, and then implemented, saying, hey, we're aware there's an issue that came out. We're on top of it, just like they are on top of the store stuff. Same thing. They're very good about, there's way too many things that get errors through the store, but they're very fast to fix them for the most part. And they should be doing the same approach towards these other ongoing issues in the game. Like, where's the urgency? Come on. All right. The other one was the reading exploit. No timetable on fixing the issue with the cheaters. It needs to be fixed. It's an ugly thing that cheating has been in the game for so long without being fixed. They've acknowledged it. I'm grateful for it, but it shouldn't have taken so long to get a fix and still no ETA. So that's an ugly thing. Black eye for the game, guys. And no acknowledgement of bans. People that are going out of their way to cheat and make other players feel awful, or I don't feel awful. I've never felt awful about it personally, but I'm sure somebody's really bummed, man. Like they get looped back 40 spots because somebody's cheating and throws them that far back. That's not a good experience. That's not good for the game. Personally, I don't have any sympathy for anyone in my alliance or any other alliance that's cheating and using this exploit. They should be banned, in my opinion. I have a one-strike policy for this kind of crap. I just don't have any sympathy for those players. If you're using this exploit, I really don't care about your account. I'm just going to be honest. I don't think you care about other players' experience, so why should you expect other players to care about yours? In my opinion, one strike. If you're going out of your way to just crap on people, you have some karma coming your way at some point, I hope. Well, I don't hope, but I think it's justified, is what I'm saying. All right, moving on. RTA leagues coming soon. What is coming soon? Why don't they just say, in my opinion, I think they should take that away. Since they're not acknowledging what's coming for leagues, I don't think coming soon is the right kind of heading guide. I think it looks kind of ugly personally, because considering that RTA is such a miss, that they have this coming soon leagues with no detail, and they're not acknowledging any of their roadmaps for 2021. So it sounds like leagues are not going to come in 2021. So is coming soon a 12-month banner? I think they should just say, like that hammer and hammer icon where it's like home builder. Just show it's in progress. They're working on it. Take away the coming soon language, or just say future release, future under development, something like that. But coming soon is not 12 months, in my opinion, and it's getting kind of silly. So I also just think it's not a good look for them not to say, hey, it looks like they're rudderless. They have no direction on RTA. They don't know what to do other than just, we want it to be a replacement for TimeSync for Blitz, and so that's what it is. But it's not a good look for the game for them not to have a direction, or here's what we're going to do for RTA. For them to keep this under wraps and say no game development until the very end of 21 or 22. This is not coming soon. They should change this to say under development. Okay. Fair enough, but leagues coming soon is not a good look. All right, too many game issues not touched on. Whether it's a lot of the different aspects of the game, guys, and I think what for me mainly is there's lack of fun. But again, they titled this technical issues and like some other community feedback. They didn't say fun, but there's no new game modes that are fun in the game right now, and that's a problem. Hopefully in 2021, the very end looks like 2022. They have some plans that are under development. Hopefully we get some fun game modes, but it can't be a list lazy doled out. Here's Blitz 3.0. If it's that, I mean, I don't know, but hopefully we get some stuff, guys. But I think there's a lot of other aspects of the game, whether it's the new player experience or different things like that, that the game needs to keep evolving, improving it in general ways, and hopefully it'll do that. So, but it'd be nice for them just to acknowledge that, hey, here's some plans in motion. It's going to be a long ways out, but here's what we're thinking about. And even if it's not new game modes, just again acknowledging the different things. Like I think their arena exploit was a good acknowledgement. It's a problem. We're looking at it. We're going to try to fix it. Same thing they did with the last blog with the Thor hammer fix. They acknowledged, hey, we're looking into fixing it, and now they have a fix intended for 5.2. Cool. They should do that with everything. We acknowledge that there's a problem. We're looking into it, and then we'll advise you once we have a fix. And I think just a lot of different aspects of the game weren't acknowledged in this blog, and that way a lot of the players feel like they're not being heard. And you're not going to get everybody, but touch on the major overarching ones. Lack of fun in the game, some of the restrictions on purple gear and new player experience, the blitz, different aspects like that, and say, hey, we're thinking about starting multiple blitzes for new players to allow them to have a better experience. We want to get some community feedback on what you guys think would work. So in the next month or two, we're going to put out a poll or put out a request for you guys to type up a response. Give us your feedback. I think that would be a good thing to do for newer players, and maybe target a poll that goes out to new players under a certain TCP, 8 million. I don't know. Pick one, and then send out. Don't even include me in the poll. Only include newer players. Between a certain kind of TCP range, 1 million to 8 million, whatever you want it to be, and then elicit their feedback as to how you can improve Blitz for their daily experience. I think that'd be a really positive thing to do. Even if the rewards only went to them and none of the endgame players got an additional benefit, I think it's justified. Do something like that for the new player experience. That'd be cool. Achievements for the new player experience as well. All right, guys. Too many game issues not touched on. I touched on the last one for the ugly. Too is the new player experience, which I just addressed, guys. Just do things specifically for the new players without impacting the endgame players, and give them their own. Maybe give the new player experience their own roadmap. I think the best things that new players could get access to is something similar like in Swaga, where they got the legendary access to build directly towards legendary characters, and a better idea for mapping into Dark Dimension into legendary characters. Show them the requirements, show them the tree to get there, show them where to farm it, make it really give them a map of how to get to these players in the game. Give them a section where they can go to get some structure as to how to build their account towards some of this end game content or some of these key milestones where they can get excited for. I think that would be a fun thing for end game players. I'm sorry, new players to get, and mid game players, is to get a little bit better structure put into the game for what they should be working on, and also make them feel like they have a zone or a section that's just for them. It's not for end game players. We have all these characters unlocked. We're already doing the mode content. We know what we're doing. But do something for the new and the mid game experience that makes them feel like they have like a Yellow Brick Road, or like an Asgardian Rainbow Bridge towards Asgard. Like they're on their way. They're making progress. They can see it steadily crushing closer. Like the current legendary cycling, with how they have it rotating around, the calendar changes. It's hard to know which one's coming up next, or when the next timeline is going to be for when they can expect Black Bolt in the future. I think all these things are problems for the new player experience, and they get structured a little better, or make it constant, more get away from the rotating event, make it static, so they can. It doesn't matter when you started the game; you can route towards the ones you want when you want, based upon your preference. And I think that would make the new player experience better. Would it maybe cost them money from some spenders from the kind of rush purchases for these events? Maybe. But at least if you want to keep it rotating, at least map it out what the requirements are better for them, and put it somewhere in the game where they can go to see and feel excited about building up towards that. Whether or not they time it right for the event, rotating calendar is one thing, but at least give them a little bit better structure. I think do something for Blitz, do something for Purple Gear, give them their own kind of zone where they can kind of ramp into the game and feel incorporated and part of the community. I think would be a good thing. But anyways, there's a lot of positives here, guys. I'm going to wrap it up, but I thought there was a lot of positive stuff that they were doing. So there is some good. But overall, hopefully in 2021 we have some improvement. Again, just to summarize and wrap this up, we're going on an hour and 15 minutes. Scopely, do more things proactively in the background without having to be asked, and especially complained at with a megaphone from large portions of the community, and the overall negativity in the game will subside. There's always going to be frustration about gear. I understand that gear is always going to be a bottleneck in the game. Never going to go away. Always going to be there. I didn't even mention red stars, guys, and I'm acknowledging that red stars are an issue in the game. But personally, I understand that that's one of their profit models and the RNG aspects. I don't even have a major problem with how many I'm acquiring. We don't get them on a major character. It is what it is. It's okay. I love Silver Surfer. I'm probably going to buy him, even though I don't spend that much on the game anymore. And if I get a 1-star on him, I'm going to be bummed, but it is what it is. And I can always buy them up with tokens afterwards. I think the main thing they could do is, for regarding red stars, is increase the rate of tokens. They trust in their last blog post. We'll wait to see what the rate is and all that stuff. But red stars and T14 and T15 gear bottlenecks, for me, I understand that they're going to be restricted. There are some lower, I think the purple gear and some of those 61s I mentioned should be ramped up. But overall, I'm fine. Have a slow progress in the game. I'm fine. My frustration in the game is there's not many game modes that are fun to do. I don't necessarily care that my characters are tier 14 or tier 15. I just want to have fun in the game. I'm pretty simple. I'm a simple person. I just want to have fun, man. So as long as I'm fun, I don't really care what power level my characters are at. I want to see progress, slowly and keep moving up. But as long as I'm having fun, I don't care. Like if RTA, I was using a tier 15 character or tier 13 or tier 9 character, I just want the mode to be fun. It doesn't necessarily matter what characters I'm using from a power standpoint. As long as you're enjoying it, to me, that's the point of games, hobbies like this. But I would like to see Scopely do things in the background to continuously improve the game without being asked. And I think that would while there will always be frustration mechanics in the game and frustration because of that felt by the players, overall, if you introduce fun game modes and you're doing consistent, perpetual bug fixes and improvements to the quality of life without being screamed at, then you have a good relationship with your player base and community, and you have a healthy environment. And then everyone's excited about the things they should be excited about, and they're not. There won't be this collective angst or voicing of concern with the game, as long as you're not being neglecting. So one thing I think that was pretty obvious when you read the community feedback, guys, is that they were saying with the training mats, hey, we realized that you're giving one of T2 and one L2 or L3 a day was widely off the mark, and we're going to start giving you 1,000 per month. Those are kind of things, guys, that like they should be addressing and identifying in the background without us having to say, we are so far away from the mark that we're going to have to scream and yell until you hear us and do something about it. They should be looking at some things like this, but I think it's hard in their mechanic because, again, they're purposely injecting frustration. So it's hard for them to parse out the difference between, okay, what's just the routine frustration that we're kind of like making them feel, and what's the boiling point to where they're going to quit. And that might be difficult on their side to analyze, and that's their job to figure it out. They're creating this stuff, so they got to come up with the metrics to kind of analyze that. But I think they need to get better at, again, introducing wax on new things that are bottlenecks, and then wax off, take away something that's 3 years old. That's a bottleneck. So introduce a new, cool. That's going to be the bottleneck and paywall. Remove an old that's 2+ years ago in the game. Take that away as like a frustration, and then you're always giving and taking. There's always a trade-off, and people feel like they're okay. This is a new thing, and now I don't have to worry about that old thing. And we're moving forward into the new, and people feel progress, and they're not tethered back to the old stuff, feeling like, man, every which way I go, I'm just getting hammered here with no relief. So I think if they take more of that balanced approach, wax on, wax off, towards gear materials and bottlenecks, a lot of the overall kind of feeling towards the game will be improved. All right, guys, my Aussie wants to play Frisbee. I've gone on long enough. I'm sure most of you are not going to get this far. If you did, I love you. Hope you guys enjoy your gaming experience. Hopefully we can see improvements in the game, guys, and hopefully they take some constructive feedback, and I think it's well intended for the most part, to get the game to a better spot. And my hope is that we don't keep falling into the same pattern of large frustration goes on neglected for a year, and then voicing this large strikes or complaints or Reddit feedback. It's all negative. It's all cancer. Let's just get away from that stuff. But most of the onus is on Scopely, guys, to actually do the development of the game and do the bug fixes, do the community feedback, communicate about and acknowledge some of the major concerns, and identify those old concerns that can fall away while they're introducing new bottlenecks. All the stuff is on them. The players, you're not part of the problem. If you're voicing your concern, you're not part of the problem. As long as you're doing it in a constructive way and not being a cancer in the community. Unfortunately, currently that's the cycle we're in, guys, is if we don't complain and identify the issues that are holding the game back from being a positive and neutral experience at the very least, it's not going to get fixed currently. But hopefully we can get away from that and we don't have to do this again in the future. That's my hope. I'm a positive person, guys. I just chill. I'm a really mellow person. I don't complain too much. But this game, they've currently are in a mode where that's the only way the game is seeing improvement, is when until the point to where the community is reaching out and saying, banding together, hey, we got to get a fix here because you're not hearing it, you're not getting it, you're not doing anything about this. You got to clean your bed. Oh, that's what it comes down to, guys. All right. Have a great weekend. I'm Mark Will, and that's my 2 cents on the blog post. Hopefully, we can see more of the good in Clint Eastwood in 2021. See ya.